Welcome back to the Dominion video tutorial series. This part will be about overdraw. So in previous videos we've alluded to concepts for when you're drawing your deck and how we can figure out what the best card is, and this is kind of the last piece of the puzzle. I want to talk about how things change when you're drawing your deck versus when you aren't. The first thing that changes is the concept of terminal space. Terminal space is something that we had previously said was this is how many terminals I can expect to put in my deck and then have one to play every turn, for example. When you're drawing your deck, you're going to have all of your cards. So your terminal space, the concept of that is, oh, well, how many terminals can my deck play on a given turn? I want to have that many terminals in my deck. And if you want to add more terminals to your deck, it's not about adding more cards to your deck so you can draw your cards less often and you need more terminals. That's not what it's about anymore. It's about, oh, I'm going to add some more villages to my deck because that's going to allow me to play more terminals. Another thing that is a significant difference when you're drawing your deck is called gain and play. It means when you gain a card on your turn, you might be able to play that card on the very same turn you gain it. For example, if I draw my deck, I play a workshop, and I gain a thing, I could continue drawing because I've drawn everything. I could draw that same silver and play it on that same turn. Gain and play is incredibly good for a lot of different reasons. And it is one of the biggest pluses for wanting to be in the whole deck paradigm. And we're going to talk about how that changes the way you build your deck just so you can take advantage of it. The other thing, the major thing that changes when you're drawing your deck is the role of cycling. A lot of cycling was to play your best cards more often. And yes, that is still kind of the case, but if you're playing all your cards every turn, what does that mean? And what it means is you want to find your deck control cards at the start of your turn, because at the start of your turn, your best cards are your deck control cards, so you want to be playing those. And then the payload cards at the end of your turn. So the ideas of spamming and churning don't really apply at all. It doesn't matter if I'm putting my deck into my discard pile, whatever. It's all going to be in my hand anyway, so what difference does it make? Spamming cards, you're not spamming cards in order to play one on more turns. You're spamming cards in order to play more of them on every turn. So those concepts are just, they don't even hardly apply when you're drawing your deck. And then the effects of top decking and filtering, the point of that is to get deck control at the start of your turn. So yes, it's still very good to top deck cards because you can top deck control. I'm doing my turn, I've drawn my deck, I'm buying stuff, and if I can put the cards I buy on top of my deck and their deck control cards, then that's very good. That's a very good cycling effect for when you're drawing your turn. And then the same thing with filtering cards. You want to put filtering cards on the top of your deck or have them in order just to find your deck control cards. Because if I'm going to draw everything, I just want to make sure I find the drawing cards earlier on in my turn. That's going to increase the chances of drawing my deck. It's going to decrease the chances of a dud turn. And so all of this comes together in a concept that I call overdraw. Now, overdraw is defined as you play something that gives you plus cards, but you have no cards left to draw. And that seems kind of bad, right? I want to draw a card. Maybe I could play it, right? Why would I do this thing that seems wasteful? And when you're drawing your deck, how much you overdraw or don't draw all of your deck, that can educate a lot of your decisions for when you're building your deck. And so we're going to talk about that. So first of all, when is overdraw bad? Well, if I'm drawing 10 cards and I don't have 10 cards, well, what if I had some payload cards and I drew some payload cards? That sounds pretty neato. So don't overdraw so much and not have any payload, right? When you're overdrawing, you should probably be considering adding payload to your deck instead of more deck control or more draw. The other place when overdraw is bad is, let's say my deck draws almost all of the cards in it, and it maybe can't draw 1 or 2 or 3 cards, or maybe it comes up short of drawing every card in the deck some of the time, for example. If that isn't so bad, then maybe don't have any overdraw, because then all of your draw is being used in a productive way to draw cards that are payload, or deck control that draws you more payload, right? Putting overdraw in a deck like that, that's drawing just a little bit short, and it doesn't have like one key card that it absolutely needs to find every turn. Overdraw isn't very good there. There's not much point, and at that point you are kind of being wasteful, drawing cards that you don't have in your deck. When is overdraw okay to do? Most of the time, a little bit of overdraw is okay. And this goes back to that concept from before, where I want to have a higher chance of drawing my deck because that increases my average per turn output. If I dud, I have a very bad turn. So if I overdraw just a little bit, that means I'm increasing the chances that I draw everything. And if I overdraw a little bit, that's fine. I'm still getting the entire payload of my deck, even if it's a little less. And most of the time, that's kind of where you want to be when you're building your deck, when you're in the whole deck paradigm. The other point in time where overdraw is okay is, let's say I drew my deck for the first time, and now I get to trash all my estates or all these curses that I've been given. And maybe I can buy some payload cards, but all these cards that I just drew are gone, and now I have less cards in my deck, and so I'm overdrawing, right? That's okay. You definitely don't want cards that do nothing, and when you've just gotten rid of them is a very common time when you're overdrawing a decent amount. Just be careful when those cards are coppers, okay? When those cards are coppers and they do a little bit of something, you want to make sure that you save enough coppers to buy whatever you want this turn that's going to help your deck. And then also maybe you'll save a copper because you might need it next turn. So think ahead a turn or two, and don't just trash all the coppers. They are bad cards, but sometimes you don't want to overdraw by trashing them all now when you could keep them around and draw them and spend them for maybe a turn or two and then trash them. So that's the part about coppers. Just be a little bit careful there. Now, when is overdraw good? When reliability is important. We've talked about this a little bit. Your stall turns are very bad. Your dud turns are very bad. Maybe you don't have full control over your deck yet, or maybe you're building a deck with reliability issues, like a draw to X deck, or a deck that just can't really be consistent, even if you build it really well. Yes, overbuild, have some overdraw, draw your deck every turn, have good turns. That's usually important to building the deck in that situation. Let's say you're ahead. Let's say you got a lucky draw. Maybe your opponent got a bad draw. If you are overdrawing every turn, you're kind of minimizing the risk that you have a bad turn and you give your opponent a chance to catch up. So you could take a more conservative approach when you're ahead and overdraw a little bit. And that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. The other big part about reliability is you're being attacked. Let's say your opponent is giving you junks every turn. You need to draw your deck and trash those junks as they're coming in, because if you don't, if you have a dud turn, now you're going to have twice as many junks, and this could have a snowball effect that just takes you out of the whole deck paradigm. That's not good. We love the whole deck paradigm. We want that. So if you're being attacked, having some overdraw can help you not only stay on top of the junks, but one dud turn can increase the chances of dud turns in the future, and that can just be an unacceptable risk to take. Another category of times when overdraw is good is when you're about to green. If I'm about to start adding victory point cards to my deck, in theory I would like to do all my building and then all of my greening, and so I want to have some room to stay in the whole deck paradigm as I add bad cards to my deck. And that's a perfectly appropriate time to overdraw. And then also when it's useful to draw more cards than you have in deck. And this is where gain and play comes in. I draw my deck, I play my gainers, I gain some payload cards, and then I play those payload cards. If I was starting the turn overdrawing my deck, then this is something I can do. And this is very good because you wanted to have deck control at the start of your turn. At the start of your turn, your deck is rich with deck control, and you're only drawing that payload card that you gained at the end of your turn when you found all your deck control already. So this is a very, very good way to build your deck, and you can even go farther with it. You can gain a gainer, draw the gainer, then play that, and then draw what you gain. You can overdraw by a lot, and you can still you can still make use of that overdraw in a way that's very good for building your deck while giving you like that reliability boost at the same time. You can gain draw cards. Gaining draw cards when you've already drawn your deck isn't super great, but you could top deck then. That's one thing you can do. Also, some gainers gain to the top of your deck. So sometimes you want to build to find your gainer and then treat it as a draw card. I have 2 villages and an armory, for example. Play a village, play the armory, top deck my draw card, play a village, and now I have this draw card. So that is another way you can build your deck, but that deck is going to look a lot differently. It needs to have a lot more villages in it, for example. And then finally, and I'm going to poo-poo this a little bit, but discard for benefit. If you're drawing a lot more cards than you have in deck, then you can discard them and then redraw them all. This is a thing you can do, not going to lie, but it is not that fantastic, and it is very rare that discard for benefit is going to make the difference between you going for a deck that uses that as its payload or not. With that said, if you have discard for benefit in your deck, maybe you should be drawing more so that you can make more effective use of it. That is a thing that you can definitely do. All right, so that is the concept of overdraw. It's a good way to frame your decisions when you are drawing your deck, you're in the whole deck paradigm, and shortly before and after that happens. So if you think of things in terms of overdraw, it gets a lot easier to see what the best decision is, what you can do for your deck that's going to make it good the next turn after that. And you can start to effectively plan ahead multiple turns, and you're going to be surprised at the explosive kind of growth that you can achieve. All right, until the next video, thanks for watching.